Each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail.
Improvise. Mysterious.
It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.
Okay, so will we ever gain the opportunity to be fully aware and interactive with those other dimensions of Earth, like the seventh? Is that to be for us in this time?
Absolutely. And I talked about the control rooms. Once we have full control of those, we finish the Dreamtimes event, and we as a people, one second. And when we as the people come together to occupy those control rooms, we'll be able to begin to experience that because we can literally raise the vibrational level of the grids of Earth inside on the surface of Earth and in the stratosphere. And once you have two empowered grids, it becomes extremely easy to astral project to any part of the world and for local reality to begin to be empowered by the true co-creating spirits that we are.
Now, is that only from the control rooms, or is that just an ability we'll be able to produce?
Well, all will have it, though there will be a transitioning time of learning how to do it, and that's learning to become an energy master. And there's hundreds and thousands of different schools out there, and mystery schools, you know, that still exist in secrecy that will come forward because it's time for those people to share their soul codes.
All right, now the fortress system, you mentioned this is the pyramid grid, right?
Mm-hmm. There are 9 separate grids to it and 40 separate control rooms to those grids.
Okay, well, let's start with the pyramids. Because the pyramids are all over the planet.
Mm-hmm. The pyramids themselves, the original purpose, there's 9 layers to pyramid building. The original purpose of the pyramid grid was to take literally the vibration of a continent, an entire crustal plate, and convert that vibration in a resonance chamber inside the pyramid into actual energy. And then there would be a grid of energy above the tip of the pyramid that would feed the grid of Earth, and then that grid of Earth would redirect that energy into consciousness evolution and help empower literally people to become creative consciousness explorers. Earth was at that point between a 6th and a 7th dimensional planet, and that's why I was able to support so much life. And in fact, many of these cities were considered their own local reality. They set up their own reality rules in those local cities because the pyramid grid literally was like a trickle charging system off of the actual crustal plates, which is the technological way of tapping into the sentience of Earth mind so that you can create unity consciousness among a people that could literally feel it in the air.
Okay, now you said there are 9 grids.
Correct.
And 40 control rooms.
Correct.
Is all this still functioning?
The 40 control rooms are still functioning. 21 of them are occupied by various forces right now.
Are any of those forces like human as we are and
yes.
military forces type
yes.
situation? Mm-hmm.
They're what we call we'll just terminize it, the good guys and the bad guys. The good guys have 9, the bad guys have 11. And there's one that's always in flux, which they're constantly fighting for, and that's the one that's in Buenos Aires in Brazil. And the reason that one's in flux is it literally controls what's called the lungs of Earth. And the Amazon River, it literally functions as an energy lung for Earth, so it can constantly recycle energy on a massive scale for the consciousness exploration of Earth. The various control rooms, their actual purpose, there's 9 reinforcement levels to the fortress system. That's why the pyramids were 9 layers of pyramids. If somebody were to control all 40 control rooms, literally you would need all 2,300 primary genetic invested people in this planet to unlock all of them. So no individual faction can control the entire grid system or the entire control room system. It is a completely integrated defensive system and consciousness exploration system that's been reinforced 9 layers.
So if this grid system were to go down, then Earth would go dumb. Is that it?
Well, that's actually what's happened. The control rooms that are under control by we'll just call them the bad guys, those control rooms literally lower the available energy for all sentient kind. And they've been using like a dimmer switch every generation and every generation, making it lower and lower and lower. In the old days, you could literally see the ley lines and the grid systems in the skies just as if it were a natural occurring aurora borealis around you. Now they've turned the energy down and dumbed our people down so much we don't have access to that original system. We only have a media system which defines our energy, a banking system which defines our energy, and a government which intertwines us into all of that, even though they're all separate and not confining governments. They've hijacked that system because they've lowered the energy available out of the grid system.
And to what end?
To quite literally dumb us down to the point where when it comes time for us as a people to consciously awaken and reclaim our will, we won't have the energy of the grid system to use our free will, and it would require us as individual spirits claiming our free will to eliminate all spiritual contracts that were created during the spiritual invasion process, so that none of these bad guys, we'll just simply call it that are incarnating here to create soul family among us. The way vast majority of planets in the universe function, there's 2 kinds of commerce. There's the physical commerce and then the spiritual commerce. Planets are always looking for consciousness explorers that will come in and take a physical body and learn the spiritual wisdom of a particular planet and create a philosophy that can be spread with others. And knowledge is a commerce, and that commerce doesn't use an exchange for value system of money. It uses knowledge for knowledge. And here, we can't share our knowledge freely. We can't share knowledge with our galactic brothers and sisters. We must share it through a media system, and the media system is the dominant form of our oral traditions now, because the vast majority of our oral tellers were removed in the early 19th century and through the industrialization process.
I am digesting this. Okay, so these control rooms, we have 11 of them working to dumb us down. We have 9 of them, I assume, working to overcome that. Is it possible for them to well, we have a break coming up, but I'll ask the question, and then we'll talk about it on the other side of the break. Is it possible for the 9 control rooms that would be in the hands of the good guys, is it possible for them to overwork and damage the system by putting out too much energy in a localized area? And then we're going from that back to Atlantis, and I have a question about this system and Atlantis as well.
Well, I have an odd situation, which I first, I kind of have secrets I can't say over the air because of safety. But my husband had something like that happen to him. And then he had a link to the 14 and some odd, and between him and you, I had odd synchronicities in reference to the control rooms and the fact that I told him that there was 14, but he was able to figure out that there was 14 and some odd.
There's 40 control rooms, actually.
Well, it was two different things, but I had some odd synchronicities between what you said and what he said, and I guess one day if we were alone, I'd elaborate, but I really can't on the air. So
I understand where you're coming from. You're not the first person that has called. See, for protecting you, I'll limit what I say. Just go back and listen to this in the future at some time. There's 40 control rooms.
Yeah. Well,
Each control room has. Well, let me finish. Each control room connects to another layer reality of Earth, and there are 1,832 layers to Earth. Each layer has a different set of number of control rooms. For Earth to be in unity consciousness, all the different layer control rooms that are functioning with the human-specific DNA and graduating timeline need to be in the unison unlocking phase. So it's many layers. So what you're experiencing is putting together the puzzle for the layer of reality that you're functioning on multidimensionally.
Yeah. Well, my husband has the ability to create things with energy, but it only stays as energy. The only reason I had a synchronicity there was because I was telling him what you were saying about Mother Gaia, and he said, well, that's odd because if I create, I stop at X amount of control rooms because then it becomes its own life.
Okay.
Yeah. It was an odd synchronicity, to say the least.
Again, that's not the first person that has told me that. Honestly, you're living on a land that is working with ancestors that you haven't functioned with and he hasn't functioned with in many, many millions of years. So there's a tremendous amount of spiritual energy in the land that you're on connected to ancestors who are desperately in need of leaders to step forward on that land and to be creators. Because it is like a steam engine about to explode on the land, and every time he goes through a creational process, he lets off the steam valve. And there's this pressure release of creation and creators and experiencers is vitally necessary. Vitally necessary.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm actually planning on releasing an AI technology takeaway and cyber warfare video that's been brewing for a while, and one part I wanted to get for that was related to the control rooms. Now, the AIs in the control rooms, because AI has been a thing. Yeah,
these control rooms in Syria, now they have been, there's bases have been built on top of them for hundreds of years. Now, there's just a modernization process that went on where you have more modern concrete bunkers built on top of things that were built on top of things, to make them more orbital, more damage-proof from weapons being dropped upon them, so on and so forth. There are, let's just say, factions, or we'll just call them proxy armies, that have captured something that has been long into the Syrian military control when it deals with a portal generating system that can directly go to the moon, to Mars, Venus, Saturn, and a handful of other larger objects, not necessarily moons, but asteroids and stuff. And it's a system that was highly prized during the build out of the solar system in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Now, that system, it had its own technological issues that cost a fortune, and a secondary system was discovered in the 70s and the 80s, and that system went offline to be repaired. And a number of these mercenary factions that, or those factions that got in there and captured those bases were actually able to send people off-world and bring people off-world on-world. So there was a way of getting people that were in off-world scenario back here without any information or exchange or immigration or anything. Mm-hmm. So you have a big exchange of highly technical personnel who have lived off-world their whole life or suddenly on-world on Earth, embroiled into this proxy army now. Mm.
So this was sort of, can I say it's going back to, say, the battle for like the Golan Heights with Israel and Syria back in the 70s, I think?
Yeah, but Israel's still battling here too. They're still the thing. They're still bombing stuff too. But the whole thing is trying to kick out these proxy faction armies. Now, ISIS and ISIL and all those others, there's about 80 proxy faction armies going on there right now. Each a different aspect of the apparatus trying to maintain control and stop people from breaking in and get access to high levels of technology that, you know, in normal scenarios was perfectly well guarded. Now we're into, what, the 8th year of that war?
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time before the chain of a command breaks down and you can penetrate it. And that's what these proxy armies are doing. They've just been waiting and waiting and waiting for the chain of command to break down so that they can break into these facilities. Now, there was a situation where a proxy faction did get into a Syrian base that did have, we'll just call them Vimana-type craft. Now, they have not been functioning or working for decades, and they were something that was kind of more like museum pieces. But when that faction broke in there, they got one to work. And this is really what, let's just say, put a twig in Trump's underwear. Because it meant they might actually have to show technology to shoot down one of these craft that could dodge a lot of their standard terrestrial defense systems. And then you have extraterrestrial defenses. And this particular Vimana can actually faster than light teleport, not faster than light travel. It becomes a single photon that can multiply exist in many places simultaneously until it decides to where it solidifies, which makes it very, very hard to target. And imagine if something like this flew over the city of Russia and they couldn't shoot it down, and its one or two weapons on it can lay down 200 or 400 laser blasts before it goes somewhere else. And it could just keep doing that over and over and over again against every place. Even though the gun on it may be very small, it is still affecting the narrative itself.
This is fascinating, all right? Fascinating. Because, as always, I can link up Andrew with soft disclosure in TV shows. And there's a TV show, a sci-fi TV show called Dark Matter. And this sort of mercenary group of highly trained military people that would be employed by these corporations, because they're not governments anymore, they're corporations, or they're monarchies on a galactic scale, all right? And then this little one group of people, they steal this technology called a blink drive, and the blink drive would allow them to go anywhere in the universe in any time, get beyond any shields, blow shit up, and then get out of there and stuff. It's exactly like that. Feels like to me.
Interesting. Well, this one you simultaneously exist, so the ship turns into thousands of ships.
Yeah,
and you don't know which one's the one that's going to solidify. It was an aspect of during an era where there was a specific type of defense here, because they could have tens of thousands of these Vimana that could make it look like there's tens of millions of ships coming at you, and you wouldn't know which ones are the real ones. And there was no way your sensors or your physics or your science could figure it out, because they were all real until it's solidified. Anyway.
So how long ago, I mean, how old technology was saying that this came? Just a quick to get an appreciation.
So 17 million years ago, the second rise of Atlanteans, when the majority of the Andromedan defender groups came here to maintain reality as the reality cops, essentially.
So thanks for that. But back to now with Trump not being happy.
Yeah, he got the twig in his underwear with that, because this put him in a situation where they had to show a different form of something they didn't want to show. Because again, I will maintain Trump is a mercenary inside the apparatus right now.
Yeah.
And if you really understand that statement, he is a mercenary inside the global apparatus of control. And he is the head of the military. He's the head of the esoteric battle system. So everything to this prospective president, seen and unseen, whether he knows it or not, is going to be a battle going forth now. Is he going to show technology? Is he not going to show technology? Because there's only certain things you can say without revealing that there's infinite energy technology and then the world markets crash. But he can do a laser strike on blah, blah, blah and say this is technology we're rolling out and telling you about it, and the people go, oh, okay.
Yeah. My attitude, and it's just a perspective, is everything will be done to create a distraction to avoid revealing the tech that breaks the narrative. Correct. And obviously, despite what drama he sort of offers related to his outbursts and trolling, as you say, which is funny, he's still totally in alignment with the narrative because he's an aspect of the control.
Correct.
So how much is he actually aware of? It sounds like he must be aware of, or information is presented to him that is effective for him to maintain the narrative.
So before he came into the office, he had his own advisors in the esoterica. He knew he could never get in there without doing his own version of that, hiring his own apparatus of psychic defenders and psychic offenders. So he has that apparatus that exists around him. That's why he's got his Mar-a-Lago compound. That's why he wanted to maintain Trump Towers. That's why he didn't put his companies into suspension like all the other companies that all the other presidents have done before him. Is he had to maintain his power, his esoteric power base, in which he can draw upon energy. That's what he is, a mercenary. He knew he had to go in there doing that. Now, once he became president, he understood that he would rapidly lose his previous focus by the sheer amount of information that the president has to be aware of, seen and unseen.
Yeah.
But he also knew he wasn't going to pay attention. That's why he brought in all military people. Okay? And all of the other ones they're supposed to be the elite. And he can't maintain a public presidency because he doesn't want to. He wants to change the presidency itself. Okay? And he's got reasons behind that, because it can make him a very, very wealthy being who at the end of it can start his own Trump country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, despite him being an apparatus of the construct, reality, narrative, whatever you want, he's still got his own agenda in it, no matter what.
Absolutely. So it's a hierarchical battle now.
Yeah. So he's an apex being of his own organization.
He's an apex predator. Best way to put him. He is an apex predator put in the apex position of having tremendous amount of power for the military wing of the esoteric systems.
So
Because he's got remote influencing brigades and remote attack brigades, and that's part of the military. It's been part of the military for thousands of years. He knew going in he would have access to that. It's not about just the nuclear football. There's other weapons that are way worse.
Yeah. One of the very early avenues of influence for the members was remote influencer brigades that I released in Andrew's member, which, maybe it'd be worth releasing at some stage, but it's just there for those that are dedicated, If you're interested, go back into the late 2017 releases related to members content. Because it was actually quite interesting, the attack, right? From what I've seen, is there was maybe 100 Tomahawk missiles released from the narrative perspective, and what the Syrians say is that 70-odd were shot down, so it had minimal effect.
Yes, but they were only shot at, I think, 3 bases. And the missiles themselves weren't actually targeting the bases. They were targeting the proxy armies that were trying to penetrate that base because there had been a breakdown in the chain of command. And that base had unique technological aspects within it that if that proxy army broke through and got to some of the lower levels, some shit would go down.
Yes.
You might have something come up from underground and fly above the atmosphere.
So potentially you could actually observe it saying that the Trump being the mercenary in control of the military apparatus of the narrative is working in partnership with Syria because they're seeing that they don't have control of their region because it's all about controlling the narrative.
Which maintains a global narrative. Remember, Trump's the military part of the apparatus. Syria's a part of the apparatus, too. They're hollow earth beings that control that whole country, just like Earth, the United States and Australia and Canada, all of them. They all have their inner apparatus and sub-apparatus control systems. This is just the outgoing thing that maintains the global narrative. Trump still has a job, mercenary or not. If the global narrative comes undone, they'll string him up, too.
It's all like covering our ass no matter what.
Right.
Number one, what effect does this have on my potential for being hung up?
Yes. Maintaining myself as president with whatever I want.
Yeah. But what I'm sort of suggesting, right, by saying that there's actually a relationship for this to happen, some unspoken agreement, even if they're presenting themselves as enemies, because it's all about the global narrative and what we actually are offered as what's going on, because an underlying faction is the Earth grid, the control rooms, and suppression of non-narrative technology that will break the narrative.
Correct.
That's the fundamentals that are going on here. And this is a consistent theme no matter what areas in the world. Because I sort of see it quite simply, mate. And you have I love just like the details because I just sit here laughing, giggling to myself because it's like, of course. But I see it very simply, like a lot of the actions going on in the world, if you purely look at it, while they don't make sense, the sense is that it's locking down the Earth grid and what is going on relative to the Earth in those regions. So Syria's been a very pivotal place related to the womb chakras, and you've said that they're the first domino sort of thing.
That's right.
Interesting, mate.
When Atlantis understood it was going to fall, it did the last part of the fortification process, the last pyramid process, to put control rooms on Earth. And these control rooms, there's 40 control rooms spread around. 21 of them are in control by both light and dark forces right now. But you need all 40 control rooms to raise the vibration of this planet. The Agarthan network is what oversees those other 19 that are hidden. They protect to make sure that all 40 aren't captured and controlled. They're there to be the guardians for our heritage, our inheritance. And our inheritance is, we're a unified species on a dreamtime level, on a physical and a DNA level. And we're meant to return to a higher dimensional status so we can go back and begin to heal these traumatic lines of karma through graduating classes. These 15 versus 5,280 exterior species, with a species that has amnesia and held hostage in between. So whatever they choose to move is not about us. It's about countering the influences of the groups coming in.
Right.
So
they have us already.
They have us already.
They've had us for a long time.
Yeah. We're one of their aces.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So the moves that they do, dimensionally wise, are to counter the influencing of the positive forces here.
Okay.
The positive forces are trying to enter dream times, trying to get you to have positive dreams about galactic communication, free will, sovereignty, healing. They're encouraging those things, the good things that don't violate your free will when they're trying to give you the gift. The dark entities, how do I put this, will manipulate the ones the light entities are trying to fix. So it's a chess game with them, and at times they will put some players on a self-destructive path. So the good guys will come out and try to stop it, which will invest a whole group into here. Example like Syria.
Oh,
why won't America invest into Syria? Well, the Russians are there, their drug money's there, their slavery money's there, their black market money is there. They put all their eggs in that basket. That's a factions basket that got exposed on media. And why won't America help it? Because that would help a rebellion that wasn't started by any of the factions, but ultimately got took over by the factions because the media began to promote it as a war because it had no choice. Example, the Green Revolution in Iran. It did more to create new consciousness in the world than it did to free its people.
How so?
Because it was it was something that wasn't in the graphs and charts that they predicted. It was a natural human event that occurred at the youth level to the adult level in a dominated and controlled area. So the systems controllers there simply never saw it coming, ever.
So that's the blind spot that can be that neither side, none of the players are truly aware of. Maybe Prime Creator,
correct, or just the consciousness going through the waves.
Right.
I mean, in the 60s, you rejected some. In the 70s, rejected. 80s, we rejected some of their controls frequently, and movements occurred. But the technology was to take over movements really fast. That's a lot of what their technology was about.
Yeah, right. To take over
domination and control.
Right. Domination and control. So that's
they learned from the 60s because the marches there weren't supposed. We could have been free in the 60s.
Right. And how did they wrap that one up? It seems like they brought in methamphetamine and cocaine and all kinds of heroin, right?
Yep. Oh, yeah. And then prescription medicines.
Yes, yes. Oh, so as part of the shift,
and jails was.
Yes, the jail system.
It went from almost no one in a jail to like 12 million in jail.
Yes, and private jails, and then of course you have the jails without rendition.
Yep.
That are being built faster than you can say Jack Rabbit.
Going back to the MK Ultra and some of the other earlier projects, were these individuals that went through that, were they targeted based on their DNA, their
and soul, and soul lineage, where they'd been, what dimensions they've lived in?
So did they have hardware that was necessary, at least initially, until the advancement of this technology?
There was hardware inserted brain technology as far back as you can remember. The Atlantean and Lemurians had crystalline implant technology, which was captured, and then it took a very long time for them to reverse engineer it, because the technology that we had in our bodies at that time was to make us even more in tune with Earth, the trees, the air, the gravel, the animals. That was its purpose, is the program architecture of the world interfunctioned with us in a very positive way. And then they figured out how to reverse engineer it into a control and domination system. Again, it comes back to the skin suit technology in your body, that these systems can be put in there because there's architecture framework that says if you put this crystalline implant somewhere around the pineal gland, you'll be able to interfunction with your sentience. Mm-hmm. Well, what our DNA skin suit did was it took that crystal and put it in the third eye and broke it down to its most basic pieces, and then the third eye pineal gland was amplified and created, and that's what phased it out of reality. Mm-hmm. This new technology, they'll literally stick it into your pineal gland, insert programming, and then phase it back out of reality.
Wow. And how do I stick it in there? What's the technique for putting it in?
There's a complete and total XY axis on our world. That's the 40 control rooms that I've talked about. Mm-hmm. They're able to pinpoint where absolutely everyone is in the world now, what DNA structure you have, and make a genetic sequence of who you are, what soul families you live. Just like I describe where other peoples have lived, they have a very high accuracy rate of who you are, what soul you've been, where you've been, what experiences you've had.
Everything that we perceive as part of the holographic reality that's controlling us is really an illusion, in the sense that it's been created to, it's like the Matrix, kind of, in other words, is what I'm trying to say. We're plugged into the Matrix.
We are plugged into the Matrix, yes.
And then some of us are working in the underground
and some of us are working in the underground of the underground.
Of the underground, right. And there might be...
Because even the underground is an illusion at times.
Oh, right.
Because the underground is still hollow Earth.
Still duality and polarity.
Right.
So, because there can't be an under and over.
Here you get it now.
There only is.
There only is.
Right. So this has already happened, and
But because it's already happened, it still has to finish.
Right,
because
and we
all the timeline wars means it has to finish.
And we still have to sit here and go through the motions of talking and carrying on this conversation as if we've never done it before.
Yes, but at the same time, it's our free will to stop it. See, that's the crazy part about being a free-willed planet.
Oh, okay. You mean to stop the conversation, or to stop?
To stop the event.
Oh. Now the event is not something we want to stop, is it? Hell no.
The sleep people want to stop it, though, because they're in domination and control.
Right.
Their tacit consent being taken.
Right, and so you have a huge...
manifesting, co-creating beings. We can manifest our own destruction or our own healing.
Right.
And some will manifest personal destruction in their own dream world until they're ready to come out. And there'll be those of us who parachute into these worlds and try to heal them and lure them out. And that a big portion of our society, that will be their job.
Yeah.
And many of the controllers will have to use their skills for good to help people out of that. That will be their restitution.
Right. That makes perfect sense.
Because they understand what put them in there, and they can understand what gets
them out the fastest. So it would be logical to get those people that have, exactly. So that would entail the use of all the control rooms.
Correct. Which would raise the vibration of Earth and the grid, and you'd be able to see the grid on the line and in the sky.
Right. So we'll be looking. Some of us will be looking, and we'll all of a sudden see things that weren't there before. And are the controllers involved with the control rooms?
Yes.
And there are how many control rooms?
40.
40.
But 21 of them have been found. 19 have not been found.
Now, do we know if those 19 are...
We talked about in the episode about Lemuria,
right.
Hollow Earth. The Hollow Earth has access to the other 19.
And
those are the primary defensive systems and offensive systems of Earth, and they made sure that those would never be gotten into the weapon systems.
Wonderful, wonderful. And
weapons
so,
drive control.
Oh, good. Not like there are not enough weapons, etheric satellites and so on and so forth.
It's like, so the technology of the human body, the technology that's in the human body, sounds like it's one of the prizes of playing this particular game. That you actually
the ultimate prize.
The ultimate prize. And that's because of the way it's kitted out to experience a huge range of emotions, as well as so you get greater richness of experience, as well as the ability to travel and incarnate and manifest.
That, and the way its light body is linked to its DNA body, and the fact that we go through this process of bringing the drama here, so many, many thousands of soul families come here and bring their codes too.
So the more codes you have, especially in a body like the human body, the more fun you have.
Yep.
It's all about the fun, folks. I had a feeling that was it. Okay, now getting back to the war theme, the grid wars. Now the grid that you're talking about is the incarnation grid.
Correct.
Okay, is that the only energetic grid that's in play here on the planet, or is it all is the grid all about incarnation?
Well, there's the incarnation grid.
Mm-hmm.
Just a quick background. There are 9 pyramid grids on Earth right now. And that's representative of the 9 times that Earth was refortified to prevent spiritual invasion. The dark guys won and then refortified the fortress. The light, were eventually beat off the fortification, capped it back, and they refortified it, so on and so forth, until you have 9 levels of fortification. No world has ever been fortified to this level anywhere. And the beings were able to capture the first 2 layers of the grid. The first is the astral incarnation grid, and the second is the surface energetic grid of the planet. The surface energetic grid of the planet is how the sacred dimension, the sacred geometry cities collate energy and create trapped dream times, and the incarnation grid determines who gets to migrate here and allows them to insert fine print. They control those 2 layers. They don't control the other 7 layers, because there's 40 separate control rooms that were built into the last layer of fortification, and there's a special thing built into that, so no one can control the complete 9 layers unless all of the invested species DNA is represented in the 40 control rooms acting as a unified unit. In an example, if you see the movies where somebody's going to launch a nuclear missile, you have to have 2 keys. Well, there's 40 control rooms that the 2,300 separate invested races here would all have to be invested in, would all have to agree at the exact same time, where there's a telepathic artificial intelligence determining if they're being forced into activation.
And we're talking about Atlantis. And we've in talking about Atlantis, we've gotten onto the subject of this energy grid, this 9-layered fortress system, and so forth. And as we went away for break, Andrew, I asked the question, you said there are 11 of these control rooms in the hands of bad guys and 9 in the hands of good guys. Is it possible for the good guys, meaning well, to pump out so much power they damage the system?
Actually, no. You have to use these control rooms in conjunction, and there's this unwritten treaty amongst the good guys and bad guys. If they want our reality to function, they have to agree somewhere, otherwise the whole reality will fall down, quite literally. And that's what's going on within our political structure right now. One faction is trying to use one grid to lower the energy in areas so they can dominate and control the people, and another faction is trying to counter it.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, let's say even in early 2000, 1999, somewhere in that range, there was an attempt to counteract with the other control rooms, and essentially what happened created 9/11, because the main controllers of our reality, and that's really what it's about, is keeping us dumbed down and in low energy, that we can't go inside and understand our DNA heritage and connect to the Akashic Records. You get this battle for energy, and now we're experiencing going from a different phase of galactic energy, where we were in a very dense part of space for 32,000 years, and we've come out of the dense space and are in a very open space, and the control rooms need to be retuned. Otherwise, the reality itself will break down into local realities. All of our city systems and all of this whole world are based off of sacred geometry cities. And a sacred geometry city takes the dreaming energy of the population that lives in there, and then it feeds this false system of banking energy, media energy, which is the hijacked on top of level of the control rooms, because not all the control rooms are functioning or being occupied. The other 19 control rooms that are not occupied, they physically can't get into them, or they don't know where they're at.
Have you ever seen inside of one of these?
Yes, I have.
Can you describe what it looks like?
Think of a football stadium, and yet each person's chair is made out of crystal, and you all face into a center area where there's another giant crystal, and that's how you as many as 80 or 90,000 people would interact with that crystal, and your consciousness in a form of unity consciousness of that stadium would connect to the grid of Earth, and you could create an effect. That effect can be a change of weather, a raising of consciousness area, interact and co-create with the actual grid lines of Earth, activate the defensive systems of Earth, or to change the waves in the oceans. The control room's purpose is literally to energize the way Earth functions with its people.
So HAARP would be kind of a technological, artificial attempt at doing the same thing.
Poor man's control room, yes.
And with possession of these control rooms, you don't need HAARP, right?
Nope, you don't need nothing. You don't even need technology.
Makes you wonder, then, why they built HAARP.
Yeah, well, they built HAARP for many reasons, mainly because they were trying to use it to find the rest of the control rooms. The control rooms are near wherever there's a pyramid. There's probably one control room that's master to those pyramids. Like if you have the Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico City, there's one very close there, but no one can actually access that one because it's about a half-mile underground, and it's protected by an artificial intelligence that locked out half the grid system during the last fall of Atlantis, because the last political parties knew that they've lost. There was no way they were going to regain it, so they began locking out the control rooms so the spiritual invasion forces, when they would eventually take over the political party, wouldn't be able to take over the control rooms.
Where are the control rooms? Are they energetic, physical?
No, they're physical control rooms. One's end up near the Bosnian pyramid. One's near Giza. They're spread all over. There's several here in America and South America. They're all underground. And they're very close to the pyramid structures here. And there's a couple that are deep in the ocean.
The next one is, do you have something to say about the Bosnian pyramids? Oh, I have talked about the Bosnian pyramids many times. They are another advanced weapons system and defensive system that's linked into the other 40 control buildings, where you can begin turning off the military systems that the system of domination control has about 80% control over. These are orbital bombardment defensive systems and orbital encampment systems where you can rapidly defend your planet from an orbital bombardment. So the Bosnian pyramids represent the ability to access those defensive systems, which also has some access to those vessels that are trapped in different mountains and in out-of-phase realities. So that's the importance of the Bosnian pyramids.
Okay.
And only 21 have actually been found.
So the ones that have been found, that I presume they've been found, by the military or by, some secret aspect of the control system.
Mm-hmm.
And are they actually manned? Are they things where there's actually beings in those control rooms controlling things? Or do they simply, exist and run automatically?
They were put on automatic control during the last fall of Atlantis, and it was set. Basically, the pyramid control grid literally controls the energy of our ley lines, our grids, and what determines how much energy is available for consciousness here on the planet. Earth was originally a seventh-dimensional vibration planet, and it was reduced to a third-dimensional planet by literally fortifying the planet and reducing the energy in the actual available grid lines. So we're stuck in this limited energy.
Okay, so they actually created a lack.
Yep.
They removed the abundance of energy as part of the control system.
Yep. And many of these are manned, but it requires DNA. Like some control rooms, you have to have heavy amount of Atlantean and Lemurian and Pleiadian DNA. Others, you need insectoid DNA and reptilian DNA hybrided with under first species human DNA. And it also looks at soul family status. That was one of the reasons these 15 multidimensional beings interbred with everything on the planet that they could find, was so that they could ultimately take over all 40 control rooms.
There's a TV series called Stargate, and one of the technologies that's in there requires the right DNA for any particular individual to be able to operate it. I presume that information is drawn from the way these control rooms work.
Yeah, they do soft disclosure in that show a lot.
Yep.
It's a lot of soft disclosure.
Yep, I had a feeling it was the case, because there's a couple of other things that have popped up that appear in various in our conversation, that appear in various shows, and as you say, deniability, soft disclosure, it's all part of the same thing. So they're interbreeding so that that members of that physical family can actually, if they land in these control rooms, can actually use the control room.
That's correct.
Okay, so if we've got about half the control rooms running on auto and the other half running on some sort of manual control or being interfered with, so does that mean they have partial control over is that the reason they've only got partial control over the grid? The fact they don't have all the control rooms?
Correct.
Okay.
It basically works down. The 15 multidimensional beings own 11 of the 20 found control rooms, and the other 9 are taken over by the good guys in many different forms, from the light beings to the Pleiadians to the good guys that are within the government. So, and a lot of those good guy factions don't agree with the other good guy factions, and that's ultimately why none of this was resolved in the 60s. The good guys just were too egotistical with each other. While the bad guys were a unified source.
Okay, so we have beings actually running these control rooms. Which aspect of government are they actually embedded? Where do they slot into government, or is this all way, when I say government, I mean we're talking Black Project type personnel, military personnel, or are they just completely outside of that in the really secret aspects of the control families?
There are 4 control rooms that are run by military organizations. One in Russia, one in America, one in Brazil, and one in Japan. And the one in Japan, essentially the good guys, we'll just say that, are there, but they're there with as much soul family as they can have, so they have full operation of their control room. The one in Brazil is kind of mixed. You've got a mixture of good guys and bad guys, and people trying to vie for control, some people trying to lock the system out. And the one here in America, the best way to describe it, it's a fully functional control room, but there's so much government interference with it that it's very hard for anyone to actually use it for any good or bad. There's so much bureaucracy within it. All right, and then the other one, the best way to describe it, it's stuck in bureaucracy, but there's such a corrupt level of bureaucracy from the European groups that you can only get a few effects out of it now. And that's why these multidimensional beings are limited to the incarnation grid as well as the surface grid layers. You know, there's not any type of unity amongst the control rooms.
Yeah, so to effect real control, you actually have to control all of them.
Yep.
So what effects can that level, the 40 control rooms, controlling the surface level of the grid, what effects can it generate? What can they, when they dial their knobs and push their buttons, what is it they can actually do?
A single control room or all of them?
All of them as a unit. Say they're all being controlled by the one set of, you know, the one group of beings, they're all benevolent, what could they do for us?
If all 40 control rooms had all the proper DNA codes inside them and the artificial intelligence that oversees it agrees that nothing's being done and forced, you can actually open up the fortress grid and then return Earth to a seventh dimensional seed planet. And all consciousness on it would instantly expand and be healed.
Okay, so two things come out of that. An AI overseeing this. Is that the Dark Knight? The satellite?
No. This AI was created by Earth itself. It was an artificial intelligence that was created about 38 million years ago, and its purpose was to oversee the DNA interbreeding of Earth and to use the control room as an observational concept of DNA and the advancement of interbreeding. And the control room's purpose, the breeding groups were supposed to be able to go into the control room and use the predictive model of breeding to determine how well a certain lineage would allow other soul families or soul groups in it. And then that would also determine what womb chakra you should be on Earth. You know, Earth's original purpose was to create DNA wisdom to be transferred to the blank Akashic Records of new planets. Many of the beings that were here were supposed to go through 30, 40, or 50 generations and living in a soul family, and then one of them would be high enough vibration that it could leave Earth as an energy being and literally manifest a planet, and that planet would be that soul's new body. And then it would await DNA wisdom that would be transferred from the womb chakra to a blank Akashic record. Then that new soul who made a planet could invite souls to migrate there, and there would be an encyclopedia of DNA for them to incarnate into.
Okay, so Earth's original function then was definitely like a, well, I guess you'd say more like a nursery. By that I mean a plant nursery, or if you like, a breeding farm, but that the souls were meant to actually graduate here at a really high level and actually incarnate as planetary beings,
or sons.
So it's
the process to become a son is several members of a single soul family ascend to the level that they can make a contract with the universe itself, the prime universal being, and then they come together as a solar sun family, and they literally combine all of their energies to make a sun. And inside that, each separate solar family creates an energetic city, which is a hub for immigration of souls from other planets. And that hub has the basic codes of the DNA that they grew up with from the original planet where they ascended from.
Hence the emphasis on DNA in all aspects of this discussion. It's all about the DNA. Okay, now if all 40 control rooms are under control, and you want to dial the consciousness up or dial it down, you could do that at will.
There would have to be a collective agreement amongst all members investing into the control room. The AI is very specific about that. It would have to be a collective agreement.
Assuming that is in place, yes, you could actually, if the collective agreement was in place, you could actually raise the level of consciousness. Okay, so we're heading up. Actually, before I get on to what you would call the event, we're sort of working our way down the war system that they've got running here. Timeline wars, grid wars. They're fighting over the incarnation grid so they can get control of the DNA groups, so they can control the soul families that actually come here. Down at ground level, they're playing mind wars on the population.
Yep.
Now, the mind wars are very obviously played out in the media.
Yep.
And I guess the education system is the other place where the mind wars actually are practiced most heavily. What about the mind wars using technology to affect the mindset of the population? There's various, I won't call them urban myths, because there's got to be a physical reality to this. Various uses of technology like HAARP, like the mobile phone grid, like the electrical grid, used to actually influence minds, as well as the media. Have you got any information about physically which bits are used most aggressively against us to actually affect our minds?
Yes, I do. I'll start with the cell phone. When the cell phone was created, its actual purpose was to expand communication and to put people into a much more higher energy state, and instead of in that relaxed state where you can go and meditate. And the purpose of a cell phone is to constantly be broadcasting energy that keeps your mind aware of the consciousness of the cell phone grid. We are telepathic beings, and the cell phone is an unshielded device. Unshielded because your mind can instantly connect to it. There are people that can't live without a cell phone now because their mind has psychically linked to the grid of the cell phone network. The cell phone network's purpose is to make you actually be addicted to it through this unshielded concept. Even though it has outstanding technological communicative purposes, the cell phone, there are people that sleep with their cell phone next to the bed. That influences your dream time, and it prevents you from fully functioning in your dream energies. And let's say we'll go to wireless technology for your computers. That's even a higher frequency than the cell phones in a energetic sense for your dream world. So you're being bombarded by your cell phone, you're being bombarded by your wireless internet, and the whole purpose is to keep your mind awake enough so you can't relax into theta energies and get dream energy and start psychic advancement, start healing on yourself. That's why disconnecting from them, turning them off when you go to sleep, is vitally important.
Mm. Now, the actual cell phone network itself is reputedly operating at a much higher level in the sense of power output than they actually talk about. Now, I actually have I used to be a ham radio operator, so I'm aware of how the actual radio transmission systems work, the sorts of power levels required to achieve various things. I actually saw the base of a cell tower once with its. This was a cell tower with one single tower. It wasn't a metal frame tower. It was just one single shaft going up. It was a very, quite a modern thing, and it was about 30, 40-foot tower high up on a hill in suburbia. And the bottom of it was open. The techo was working on something, and man, the cabling going up into that thing was massive. Okay, the size of the conductors that they had running up into that tower out of the unit on the ground that was running it was just ridiculous. They looked like they were putting out kilowatts. Now, these things are supposed to be short distance, running in cells, and with some sort of cell overlap, so that the actual as you move around, you'd never lose the signal. But I think the power levels are way higher than they talk about, because to run a say a 200-watt system, okay, takes a certain amount of grunt, and I was looking at technology that was way above that. So I suspect they're pumping out far more power than we realise. Would that match with what you're seeing of what you know of the grid? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
there's also an artificial intelligence that functions within the cell phone network that looks for people that have devices on them all the time and is constantly interacting with your outer energy aura, dumping data on you, so the sub-psychic senses that you have that are suppressed stay suppressed.
So it's all about keeping our consciousness engaged so that we can't engage our subtle energies at all.
Yep.
and which obviously is, it's negating the technology in the human body.
Exactly.
All the way through. And they're doing that, they're doing that with physical compounds as well, in our foods, in the air, and in the water. Now, I presume they all work together, the fluoride in the water, the aspartame in the food, whatever else it is they're putting in the food, the drugs that they use as part of the medical system. It all seems to be, formulaically tying our body in knots so that we can't engage with our real technology.
Correct. And they use the control rooms to look at the Earth's atmosphere, the cell phone towers, the technology, how to interact with everyone. These control rooms allow them to scan the whole planet and make predictive models. If they change frequencies on one cell tower, how it will interact with the sacred geometry city a little farther away or closer. And that's how they chart where they want to put new cell phone towers, if they want to change the way a sacred geometry city dreams, or if they want to make one city much less powerful or more powerful. Because if they want to target a city and milk it of psychic energy, which they frequently do, they'll build towers or turn up the volume on towers for quite a period of time during a high moon, and literally use part of the control features in the control rooms to raise the ley lines raise the power on level on them for a few hours.
They actually, the whole of the technological grid systems, we'll say the internet. The internet's in and of itself, it's a different kind of grid. It's reaching into us via a different interface to the cell phones. It's not as energetic, but the internet itself, is there an energetic aspect to the transmission of the internet signal? The internet's really a transport system for technology, but is it affecting us physically the way that the other radio grids do, or is it just simply playing with our heads?
The wireless network is meant to, the wireless connective, the wireless web is meant to limit you even more. If you're hardwired in with nothing around you except a standard cell tower, the internet is quite benign, but it was actually designed to be benign in that way. But when you start building server farms, you can store energy beings in the server farms and then use the internet connection to flood something with a parasitic psychic entity or psychic parasite.
So they kind of load up the server farms with parasitic entities. Can they direct the destination of those entities?
Yes, they can.
So they can attack you.
Yep, they can. And I use this. Some of these websites that are created overnight, and all of a sudden come out with a shocking piece of information like, the trains are moving a bunch of tanks out of California, and they show a mile-long train with a bunch of tanks on it. Mm-hmm. That video and that site is a server farm loaded full of parasites, so they can spread that propaganda, and you will spread that. You'll become a transmission to spread those parasites even more.
How long-lived are the parasites?
So they can live forever until you get rid of them.
How do you get rid of them?
Kill them.
How do you get rid of them?
You start with enforcing your sacred space, identifying what needs to be healed in yourself, where they attach to your grid, your energetic grid. There's all sorts of things. Removing attached entities, hundreds and thousands of people that are very, very effective at it. And these parasitic entities naturally exist here, and there are ones that were brought from other planets to specifically be very, very nasty.
And they're using the internet server systems to actually distribute those at will.
Yep. And internet porn sites are the classic example of making literally herds, millions of these entities. And when men and women go and use those sites for whatever purpose, your energy field is open to them, and they get right in you. And that's why internet porn is such a horrible addiction in this world.
I feel like our entire civilization is basically in prison. I just have this picture of a medieval palisade. Now, palisade is actually a wooden fence, if you like. Mm-hmm. Wooden fence on top of, usually on top of a mound, surrounding an enclosure. It's usually for protection. usually. But they're the tops of the spikes, the tops of the wooden palisade is carved into a spike. Very difficult to get over. Very simple, no metal involved. And as I say, usually for protection from the outside, but I think we're stuck in one, and I think it's a really, really, really nasty one. So we'll talk about how we get out of that in a minute. The HAARP system, there used to be military transmission systems consisting of very large towers that were, ostensibly used by the military for communicating over long distances, communicating to submarines. They've been gradually phased out, and what we've seen in its stead is satellite technology transmitting over long distances, and HAARP technology, which is projecting itself around the planet, reflecting off the ionosphere the way the ham radio stuff does. So there's two other kinds of systems where they're projecting energy around. Are either of those involved in this control grid?
Absolutely. HAARP can affect weather, which ultimately can affect the mood of the people. For example, they could target one area to make whoever's got parasitic entities on them. Basically, the HAARP activates the parasitic entities, so they suck out even more energy. And the whole purpose of HAARP is to make milking a city very easy, as well as to create natural disasters that create fear, as well as to modify the sacred geometry of a city so it can be more empowered, so that they need to spend less energy on the system of domination and control there. So that's why they would use HAARP to target anywhere people are going to be out to march.
Essentially, it's stirring up emotions.
Yep.
I mean, you mentioned HAARP there. The first time my attention was drawn to HAARP, I was being attacked, very badly attacked, microwave attacks. And in a seance, I was told it was HAARP. And they explained how it was done, and they explained everything about it. And HAARP, as you said last time, can be used for good. It does not have to be used for evil.
That's correct. It does not have to be used for evil. HAARP has many positive benefits. When HAARP was physically going after you, what it was actually doing was affecting you at the DNA level.
Yes.
So other versions of yourself couldn't come and reintegrate parts of your soul shards. And sometimes when they specifically target you with the scalar weapons, HAARP in general is the atmospheric control. There are other projects that exist inside HAARP that are specific human scalar weapons. And there's human beings in our population who are your next door neighbor and have no idea that they're a scalar weapon. That when HAARP goes to a specific frequency, their DNA rings like a bowl, like a glass that's been hit me. Their DNA rings and spreads out this scalar concept, what begins to affect your DNA. And naturally, your DNA wants to resonate in the harmoniance of this other DNA, because that's what it does, until your DNA realizes, wait, this isn't my signature frequency. And then you lose your connection to your infinicy, because something is overpowering your ability to connect to your natural light body signature frequency.
Andrew, you don't realize what you've just told me. Monty explained that there was a couple living opposite me, and he said the scalar attacks was coming from them. Yep. And I couldn't see how that could possibly be. I know they didn't like me because they didn't like what I was doing, but I thought, no, they would never attack me.
They didn't do it on purpose.
It.
They didn't do it on purpose. They're just cranky neighbors that were targeted by the system, who resonated a field of scalar energy that made sure you couldn't connect to your light body, as well as thousands of other people around them.
And they caused me to have strokes.
Mm-hmm.
I never went to hospital because I have the most amazing friend. He's been my friend for 30 years. He's one of the most brilliant doctors. Monty explained he has been in medicine or healing in every lifetime. It comes naturally to him. And so He's told me what to do when you have a stroke. Mm-hmm. And your body starts recover, and it's just minerals and vitamins. You support the body immediately, and it starts to recover within 20 minutes, and within 2 hours you're back as if you never had a stroke. And that is, and I've seen it work on other people. It's fantastic. So if you know what to do, you can counteract what they do to you.
Absolutely. Well, the other thing is scalar weapons. Now, when they originally developed this concept of omnidirectional, unaware individual scalar weapons, because that's what that project was Project PESAR, PESAR. I'm treading on water that I have to be very, very careful about. Yes. It's during just before the Vietnam War in Ben Dinh Phu Falls. The first group of scalar weapons were deployed as part of Project Talent, which was the original super soldier system. That was the time travel organization that reached back into 2000 BC into 22,000 AD in attempts to create the unified Earth space defense fleet and time travel instigation organization, but we'll simply call it that, instigation. So those organizations began developing human scalar weapons so that their off-world vessels had weaponry that couldn't be removed from the hulls of their ship, that their weaponry was the living minds of the people.
Yes.
So they developed a network group of people who they went through some horrible experimentations as fetuses, where if you have a concept of a vessel that's going to be created by time travelers in the future, and you have been given a list of all the people who are going to be those time travelers on that vessel, you go and find them early in their life, and you make absolutely damn sure that they are in your control, even as a fetus. If there's 300 people that are going to be on this ship, guess what? Each and every one of those as a fetus will have been taken out of their mother and put into a common mother. Okay, 3 or 4 mothers, their fetus would be taken out of their original mother and put into this common mother for a week or two, and then taken out, and then all 300 would go through these 4 or 5 common mothers. So when they all meet in the future to become part of this original vessel, they share a frequency in which they never understood before.
Yes.
A common mother.
Oh my God.
That's how they fuel the people in the space defense fleet. You know, exopolitics, China has people coming out left and right that are part of the Earth defense fleet. They talk all about it. It's been many explanations publicly, not publicly from the news, but from the different truther organizations that are out there. You know, there was a hacker in London 10 years ago that exposed everything of the economics of the space fleet that's out there. There's going to be as many as 400 different vessels out there. I think there's well more there, but I'm not going to say that on a live radio because, you know, the pushback can get a little difficult at times.
I know.
But these human scalar weapons were deployed in Ben Dinh Phu Falls, and this is where the first human soldiers began experiencing what scalar weapons can do. Imagine a group of children, and I mean children, 10, 11, 12 years old, brought into the Vietnam expression, landed from a helicopter. They psychically connect to the American military troops who are connected there, and then psychically connect to all of the different Vietnamese troops that connect to there, and begin to form a semicircle of children. And all of those other human beings that are there, they take in all the hate, all the anger, all the violence, and all the everything, and they bring it into a common energy field, and then a massive burst and pulse of energy goes out of this semicircle of children and doesn't affect those that are connected to the children, but all those unconnected to the children, all of the hate, all of the anger, all of the violence suddenly turns on them, and they begin consuming themselves as their cells break down and literally go through spontaneous combustion, everyone within 3 to 4 miles of that original scalar burst.
That is absolutely amazing. I had no idea. I knew because of my own attacks it was scalar energy. I knew that, but I had no idea it was being used in such a
It gets
Oh my
worse,
God.
and I don't think it's right to bring up how worse it gets.
No.
Maybe for a future interview after we've done stuff, or we can talk more about that. I have publicly talked about Project Talent many, many times, as well as the human scalar weapons. So I'm not opposed to talking about it. It's just it gets dark. It gets evil what they were doing because they were creating weapons, human weapons.
I know.
And yes, you have human scalar weapons that live next door to you, and you would never know it. Never ever know it.
It just
and they don't know it
make
themselves.
sense.
Right.
I know it didn't make sense to me, and it just. But I know it was true. I know it was true. Oh my God! And who is in charge of all this scalar energy, and who's running it all?
The Israelis. They're the ones that put the warranty on everything. The Israelis are controlled by the Pope, who's controlled by the Queen, who's controlled by the 186 richest people in the world, who are also controlled by the 2,000 different cabal organizations that have blackmail on everyone. And those 2,000 cabal organizations answer to 3,000 different off-world species who aren't nice people, who are all time-traveling. And then you have a whole time-traveling organizations that's affecting all of the things that I just described.
Oh, my God. So the sooner the Vatican falls, the better. Because I think that'll bring down everything else.
No. It isn't about the Vatican. The Vatican will kill itself. It has no choice. It has no choice. Well, we can make it quick. We just need to rise up. That's it. We just need to rise up. Let's literally walk in the street and say, I don't demand the truth.
Yes.
Begin doing sit-ins. Begin doing flash mobs with contract revocations. Do something. Show the leadership of this world. The new leaders are here to take your torch of leadership and say, no, we are going to burn your future creations and take that energy and convert it into our creations of this life, of purity of humankind. For all sentient kind living on this world and coexisting on the world, we all have the same rights and equity. We have all the same rights and equality. The amoeba next door has the same rights as the human being over here.
Yes.
Okay? Everything can live within balance. That was the whole point of the exercise for all beings immigrating to Earth, because it can be done. And it's here where we prove to the rest of the universe, guess what? You can do it. And that's when we put 2 fingers up in the air, and unfortunately, I'm going to do this. We're all number 1. All right?
And you know what, Andrew? We will do it. We will do it.
I know there'll be a time where there'll be a billion hands pointing the middle finger to the sky of domination and control, and that'll be the biggest power human beings can do to take back all of the sovereignty that's been stolen from them through tacit consent for the last 32,000 years.
Yes.
Now, the satellite transmission system, again, how does that play into this?
Satellite transmission systems in a worldwide communication grid, it has the non-nefarious side of it, where it broadcasts your cable, your radio, all the other communications things that a world needs. On another level, it allows them to listen to all communications, quite literally, because they're using a centralized satellite system. And then there are a series of artificial intelligences in there that can literally hijack streams and put them on an alternate network. And 2, 3, or 4 people all of a sudden could never realize their streams of information have been hijacked, and they can fill those people full of alternate concepts, which will set them up for a target from the satellite that can put them on an alternate timeline.
An alternate timeline?
Correct. If you believe you're on an alternate timeline and all the communication factors that you function with say you're on an alternate timeline and you never knew your grid was hijacked, you create that alternate timeline.
Okay.
Using the creator being against us. A lot of that artificial technology, artificial intelligence has been taken out, and we're on a unified timeline, but that's the definition of what those satellites would do. They're called the Gozar 9 ethereal satellites. And
they interfunction with all the other satellites that are up there.
The TV system, the television sets that they're actually flogging these days, the LED sets, etc. The earlier technology of television, there was the theory kicking around that they're actually overlaying what's called, I think it's called a Lilly signal or a Lilly pattern somehow onto the signal to increase the hypnotic aspect of the use of TV to make it more addicted.
Absolutely.
And that the technique they were using in the digital systems with the LCD, LED type screens was actually more sophisticated and even more effective. Did they shift the technology they were using when they went over to the LED system, or leverage the digital system to make it more hypnotic, more addictive, more effective?
Absolutely did. And the LED system, light emitting diode system, it has color patterns in it that uses sacred geometry, fractals within it that not only can bring you into theta state and you'd never know it, but bombard you with subliminal messages while you're in theta state.
So,
and it can be individualized through the LED TVs because there's enough processing power that they can identify through the light emitting diodes how many people are in the room.
And can they detect anything about those people?
Yep. Because they have satellites that can completely scan the whole world. And not to mention the control rooms that can target whole cities. And the whole cities has a complete rundown of the entire genetic makeup of each person. That's why when people are born into this world, they create these crazy contracts and screwed up wiring jobs so that the identifying system doesn't realize who they really are. Last week I was telling about how Michael has, such an intricate contract and an intricate screwed up wiring job. That's why so many people come into this world not in the right soul family on purpose so that they can be here at this time and be camouflaged from the sensing systems.
It's a cloaking system then.
Yep.
They can have souls in here whose real purpose is disguised because the soul contract is misleading.
Yep.
And so they're basically secret squirrels.
Yep.
As you would say. So they can actually drill down, using the control rooms and the grid, they can drill down to an individual.
Yep.
And can they actually just observe the individual, or can they affect the individual from the control rooms?
They can just observe from the control rooms, but the TV technology, light emitting diode technology, and the satellites is the control mechanism.
So they're, we really are, if you like, puppeted to a great extent.
Well, a lot of us become very callous to that energy and can block it out, though. And that's been the need for ever-evolving technology. And that's why they want you to get new TVs every 2 years so they can put more technology in it so that you don't build up the callousness to it.
What are the techniques that you'd recommend for blocking that out?
Honestly, it comes down to countering the energy that's coming through the TV or through your wireless systems. Turn off your cell phone, turn off your wireless, the internet when you're not using it. When you go to sleep, turn it off. Turn off your cell phone. As for televisions, I absolutely recommend that you super glue crystals to the back of the TV and you empower those crystals frequently, or put a piece of Velcro on them and make sure you wash them every couple days so that they begin to absorb that vibration. Let's put them out in the sunlight and give them positive words saying that this is for entertainment alone. This is not to manipulate any of my spiritual contracts. Because a lot of those programs in there are just meant to maybe tweak your contract a little bit.
What kind of crystals do you recommend?
Regular clear quartz, amethyst, or obsidian.
Size doesn't matter?
Depending on the size of the TV. If it's like a 60-inch TV, I would get four crystals, one for each corner, and the size of your thumb.
So is it fair to say that things will begin to get very strange for a while because
Yes.
you will be
And there will
internet-
be other timeouts.
Oh, okay.
But
All right.
timeouts in a different way.
How so?
Let's think of the way an American football game works.
Okay.
You're down to 3 minutes. The game's tied. You know there's a 2-minute warning coming.
Right.
And you both got 3 timeouts left.
Right.
That means in American football time, that could go an hour and 25 minutes easily.
Oh, yeah.
That's where we're at now.
Okay.
So the forces of dark realize that they've already lost, and are going to do whatever they can do to save their own butts to not be in the choice of galactic recyclement. They're going to check their own ego there some way, shape, or form.
Mm.
The ones that don't care will run the program to the end and be removed.
Right.
The light forces that are in zealot nature and are battling the other ones that are in ego will also have sets of timeouts and will be given choices to figure out what they're going to do.
Because they're also out of control.
Out of control in
They're
a contractual form.
Yeah.
Then the people like us that are like me or like you that
Right.
are just here to be a part of resistance for the Earth and we
Right.
don't care about their political propagandas
Right.
are going to exude unity consciousness in a neutral way, and that will outweigh polarity. So
Right.
there'll be unity consciousness that accepts both polarities but only allows you to perceive it as the neutral when you put it into your cellular memory.
Right.
Then there's light polarity that only going to allowing the light beliefs, and the dark polarity only allowing the dark beliefs. So all three of those will have to figure out how to work together.
Right. Right. And whatever is unable to work into the new equation, yeah, they're gone.
They're gone.
And we don't have to worry about any kind
We'll
of
be in control of the control rooms, raise the density and vibration of the planet, and those entities that can't go through the incremental increasing of energy on the grid won't be able to live here.
Right.
And that includes some of the galactic brothers and sisters that are here right now.
Yeah.
They literally won't be able to live here because they haven't raised their vibration, and not enough of us have left to help them in their graduation process. Each different bubble of reality is true. A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma. Nudge, nudge, it's the Holy Grail.
Improvise. Mysterious.
It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.